On the next episode of Kevin and Andrew Have a Podcast.
Is it acceptable? Is it justifiable for my generation who's going to be taking over the mantle within the next 10 years here? I mean, is it safe to blame you guys? Like, is our blame for the lefts and the rights and all the mistakes that have happened in between with you guys, like, is it justified? Like, hey, we're coming into like hoarders. Think hoarders, right? People come in to clean up the mess for the people. Like, is it justified that we can blame you guys for the mess?
Hello, everybody. It's Kevin O'Neill, and we have Kevin and Andrew Have a Podcast right here on a busy week. It is August the 22nd, and I'm Kevin O'Neill, of course, as I just said, and along with my buddy and longtime podcast friend and singer and just an all-around good friend of mine, Mr. Andrew Caravella.
Yeah, woo! Look at me.
Episode number 12. We're here, and we're happy to be here. It's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks. We've done many interviews already. We had Milli Vanilli on here a few weeks ago already. It's been a couple of weeks already for that.
Yeah,
Can you believe
yeah.
that?
You know, we're getting a lot of positive feedback from this season 1, and I'm excited about it because we still have to finish out the season, and then we have to go back to the good old drawing board and figure out how we're going to rock it out with season 2. So that's coming up soon.
Yeah, here's the thing too. You know, season 1. I was watching. See, I know we're going to talk about generations here in a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the things about my generation as opposed to Andrew. Andrew's much younger than me, of course, but I'm the old geezer here. But I don't care. I'm still pretty hip to a lot of stuff. By the way,
no, you pick some stuff up very quickly.
I'm
You
pretty
have
hip
an
to a lot of
Instagram.
stuff. What's that?
You have an Instagram.
I have an Instagram. I have a Twitter too. How about that? But yes, we're going to talk about generations. But you know, my thing right now is that. See, this is the part of being an old geezer. I already lost my train of thought of what I was going to talk about. What was I going to say, Andrew?
I don't know. I'm not a mind reader yet.
Well, anyway, you know, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here.
As long as you show up, that's what's important.
I showed up for the job, and that's what we do. It's great to be here, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm happy, and I hope you're happy. Good. It's been a couple of weeks. It's been a crazy couple of weeks.
It has.
And this is August already, and we've done this since April.
Yeah,
April 24th.
We started we started prepping for it in March. You know,
right? We thought about it, and I emailed you and said, "Hey, let's do this." You know,
right? And
then
obviously,
you said, sure.
You know, nothing was going on. Out of work actors, so I was like, let's do it.
And you've worked so hard now that you have a chef, and
well, I've always had the chef. That's, the royalties and the residuals pay for that. So that had nothing to do with COVID. I wasn't going to get rid of the chef during COVID. There was no way.
Yeah, well, you get great food.
I know. Hey, fun fact, Bloomberg News just released an article either today or yesterday. San Bernardino County, Inland Empire, that particular region of Southern California is starting to get a boom in people moving to the area. The idea is COVID's happened, people don't need to live in metropolitan areas to commute to work anymore because their work is remote from home. So instead of paying high interest rates on the mortgage and high rent, they're just moving out of Dodge, going a little further, east.
To where?
To like the Inland Empire.
Really?
The high desert area. Fun fact, I just shout out to my cousin Monique. She's a real estate agent, and I wanted to confirm the story, so I texted her and I said, "Hey, quick question. Here's a link to this article. Have you had a boom in house sales in the IE, in the Inland Empire?" And she said, "Actually, fun fact, I have. I've actually just sold 7 houses in the last 45 days." And I'm like,
really?
I guess it's real news. Like, that's happening.
Because last time I checked, people were getting out of Dodge, out of California. People didn't want to be here.
I think you have to think of it this way. Like, a lot of people from like the LA area are moving out this way, right? And then from here, these people are trying to move out of California altogether. So I think it's like a touch and go. There's just more people moving out here than people that are leaving.
Well, I don't know if I told you the story. I'm sure I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, but I've got 2 or 3 utility trailers that carry a lot of equipment and stuff in it, because of the band and the DJ work and this, that, and the other. And I went to get some parts for one of my trailers over at Carson. It's been a couple of 3 months ago now, probably.
Wow, you drove to Carson.
Well, no, not Carson, the city. Carson Trailers. It's a company.
Oh,
they make trailers. But And by the way, Carson, if you're listening, great advertising for you. Just give us a call. Anyway, I went over there and got the parts I needed. And the lady that was in there, she goes, I go, where are the trailers at? Why do you not have any trailers? She goes, that we've sold 47 trailers in the last 2 weeks. And I go, what?
Wow.
Are you serious? She goes, yeah, people are wanting to move out of California. As a matter of fact, a gentleman came in today and bought a trailer, and then he's driving to Vegas today to pick up a trailer to come back to California so he can pick up his stuff and get out of California.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's kind of ironic now that people are maybe there's a lot of houses open and maybe they can make more sales in houses. Maybe they're cheaper now. I don't know, but it is kind of weird.
This is kind of what happened in 06, 07. There was a housing boom. Life was great. And then, boom, 08, a recession hit. So I don't know if this is history repeating itself or if the dynamic's different this time. We'll know by this time next year.
It's just sad that all these things change all the time. I mean, I've noticed, so many things in the last several months have changed. Another friend of mine passed away this morning.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Her name was Christine. She had a double aneurysm that actually busted in her head 2 years ago.
Is she the nurse that we talked about earlier on this season?
No, that was Kathy. She died of COVID-19.
Okay.
And a good friend. I played with TC and Joe Eifert from American River Band, and TC's brother also passed away. So God bless Steve Moffin. He was a great guy. He was 60 years old. He passed. He had some heart issues though before. He had some underlying things going on. But I do want. He was a good friend.
I just wonder if the stress of the pandemic just kind of complicated the existing conditions. Even if it wasn't necessarily COVID that they died from, did the extra stress of the pandemic add to that?
Maybe so. But I know that he had arterial. He had not arterial problems. He had heart problems, and he had some issues with his heart for quite some time. He'd gone into the hospital several times for his heart to get adjustments and things done. I knew that. I knew that he was going on, and then a few months ago, he had passed out at his house, and they'd called the ambulance for him and the whole bit. And then he was in the hospital in rehab. And while he was in rehab, he got COVID-19.
Oh, wow.
And so they sent him to another location where he got over the COVID-19. COVID-19. He was completely over it, tested negative, and then he all of a sudden crashed. Evidently, I haven't talked to him much about this, other than I know that it crashed, and the next day he passed away. I don't think he had, if you test negative for COVID, and I'm not sure how this works, but if you test negative for COVID-19, you don't have it. They shouldn't put it on your death certificate. So I'm sure that that's, I don't know. I'd have to discuss that with them. But
yeah.
Now I could understand if something happened with him and it was exacerbated, by, his bad heart and stuff before, because it does, exacerbate what those things. But he didn't have that, he got over it. I know that he got over it because I saw them, we played, and they had said that he had recovered from it. So I don't know, it's just kind of sad, that whole thing. And then my friend Christine, who I'd known since probably the year 2000, she was also a karaoke person, her and her husband at the time. And she was big, tall, athletic girl, very sweet. She also worked in the nursing field in some home help type thing. And she had this double aneurysm a couple of years ago, and it just messed her up extremely bad. She was lively, go-lucky, very happy, always smiling, fun, dancing, very athletic, very, very positive, very, friendly. And then, of course, this thing hits her at 4:30 in the morning, and her life has changed for 2 years. She's, cared for by her family. And it's just awful. And of course, this morning, I think basically after 2 years, it just finally was her time to go. And she passed away this morning. So rest in peace, Steve. Rest in peace, Christine. More friends. Yeah. It's just sad to see this thing happen. This year, 2020, is just horrible, as we've discussed before. I just don't like it at all.
I actually, speaking of it being horrible, I have not actually stepped foot outside of my house all year to go to a bar to have a drink and stuff like that. I was real busy at the beginning of the year in January and February, so I didn't actually really go out. and I was planning on going out obviously in March, but then this all happened, so I didn't go out, and I actually went out to a bar to have a glass of wine this last week. It was my first time. Lo and behold, you're not gonna believe this, they actually had karaoke also.
Care to elaborate which bar?
Yeah, it's my buddy's bar, the Divine Wine Bar.
Oh, Divine Wine. They had karaoke there. Oh, wow.
They did. Everything is outside, and they are all completely COVID compliant.
Well, if they're doing karaoke, they're not COVID compliant because you can't share mics and not be COVID compliant. There's just no way.
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't know. I don't know the procedure. All I know is that I went, and it was a good time. I had a couple glasses of wine. I ran into some people that I knew. A lot of people I didn't know. They decided to call me out while I was there. They decided to say, like, there's a celebrity here tonight. Then they made me stand up and wave, and then
they pointed at you, really?
Yeah, believe it or not. I was in a mask. I was just like, okay, well, that's okay. So I did get up and I did sing a couple of songs. Here's what's interesting, though, and this is why I want to bring this up, that I went out. My thought process is different now, Kevin, when I go out. For example, like, I was being introduced to people and I was shaking their hand, and it was hot. Some of them had sweaty hands, and I was very respectful. I was very cautious of not touching myself or itching my face or something. And then, like, once my wine came, I excused myself to go to the bathroom, and I just washed. I just scrubbed. And then I came back and I felt fine afterwards. But until I did that, I did not feel fine. And I don't know if that's going to be a thing going forward. To be honest with you, I don't like shaking hands anymore. That's not a thing I want to do. I can fist bump, and I can elbow bump, but I don't want to shake hands. Like,
well, I don't even like people touching me anymore. I mean, seriously, I really don't. I used to be able to hug people. I love to hug and kiss on the cheek and all that kind of stuff. I've always been. When you work in this kind of business, you hug people. You get to know them, and you hug them, and you become friends with them, and it's one of those things. But I agree with you. I mean, I played in the band. The band has been very lucky, actually, and I've talked to several. I talked to Luke Bryan's drummer today, Kent Slashare.
Oh, yeah.
And, I saw him on the Grand Ole Opry, and he was on television. They have a Circle Television, which is the Grand Ole Opry, and Luke Bryan did all of his late. Luke Bryan had an album was supposed to come out in April, but it didn't come out till August because of COVID-19. They didn't want to promote.
Luke Bryan, the Justin Bieber of country western music.
Right, and it's a huge album. And Luke, Kent said that it's just it's been a while since he's played, because all the tours have been canceled, Another friend of mine from the group Restless Heart, John Dietrich, also said he had one gig a few weeks ago in South Dakota, and he's got another one next week, but all their gigs have been canceled. I have another friend that's local here, Neil Morrow, who is very good friends with John Stamos. Neil Morrow is actually doing he's probably doing it right now, as a matter of fact, because we're on the air here. He does driveway shows from his driveway, and then
a lot of bands are doing that.
And he tips. You go in, he puts a link, and you tip them. But he's been doing that every Saturday night. It's a Saturday night drive-in or whatever it's called.
What weird is like, even like, if you're a fan and you like go to the merch booth to like meet the artist that you saw, you like to shake hands or take pictures with them, hands on the shoulders kind of thing. And I can't do it anymore. You know what? That is our culture as Americans, to shake hands, to touch each other, touchy-feely. Like, that's just how we are. And we may have to rethink the way that we do that kind of stuff going forward, because if I'm thinking then feeling that way, and you think and feel that way, imagine how many more people are really feeling and thinking that way. So it sucks, and I feel like it's rude, not to touch, but it's a thing now. Like, I just feel like it's better not to touch.
Well, it is at this time. I think it is better to not to touch. And actually, talking about sharing the mics, I just don't believe in sharing those mics. That's why I haven't done any karaoke shows at all. I've been asked. I have turned them all down because of the fact I think that sharing of the mics, I don't care how much Lysol you put on a microphone or how much disinfectant you put on a microphone, somebody touched it, and those virus may not be dead, even though it may not be on there. It could be, and it may not be dead. And you pick up that mic and use the same mic. You're supposed to put that Lysol on there and let it soak for like 10 minutes before you even touch it again. That's what they say.
Thank God it's been a week since I've been there, and I haven't had any symptoms yet.
Well, 2 to 14 days, brother. 2 to 14 days is what they're saying.
I'm halfway there, so hopefully by this time next week, our next episode, I will be okay.
Oh, I think you'll be all right. I mean, I admit it's kind of scary, but, we're having to do what we have to do. I haven't gone out to any bars to drink or anything like that. I don't, I haven't been to any of that. I have, however, I do a DJ show, which the distancing is, these people that are dancing, it's a line dance, it's a country line dance thing. Yeah. And these people are 15 feet away from me at least. They don't come up, they're not allowed to come up on the stage. They don't come up, they're very far away from me.
Do you have a cattle prod in case they get too close? You just poke them
I just tell them, I just stand up and say, you can't come up on the stage. It's what I've said that. It seems rude, like you said, but I've just told them, you can't come up on the stage. Oh, okay, sorry, we'll come back down. And they can, I have a request list, I have a pad, and they can write their songs down. I don't even touch the pad, honestly. I just take my pen and kind of go across it like this and check it off a little bit. And then, but I don't really touch the pad. I see what they request, and then I put it in, and then I play it if I have it or whatever the case is. But I just don't think that at this point in time that I want to be touching or hugging anybody. The band has played at several venues, but everything has been outside. We played a show last week with the Keith Urban tribute band. John Broderson, who owns the Long Shadow Winery in Temecula, he has a Keith Urban tribute called Urban Skies, and we opened for that band. And the Hilltop is a fairly good-sized place outside. Yeah. Inside, it's very small.
But it is a good place, but it can get packed outside.
It was packed outside. It was packed. And that was very nerve-wracking.
That gets a little cautious when you see
right.
that.
I mean, there was probably 250 people at this place outside. Yeah. And, I'm on the stage away from everybody. And, of course, people are, dancing. And a guy knocked over my Zoom audio recorder on the ground, which kind of pissed me off. But I don't know. He was dancing. They don't pay attention when they're dancing. Yeah. But anyway, I stayed and listened to the Keith Urban tribute, and I sat in the back by myself in a corner away from everybody, and I felt okay. But I didn't touch, I did shake a few hands. I shook in the bands.
I'm sure you had anxiety as you did it.
I did. I had anxiety.
I should say something, but I'm not going to right now.
And nobody wears a mask. Nobody wears a mask, and that's the thing I don't understand. They talk about maybe it's not good to wear a mask. Nobody's wearing a mask at these shows. I can tell you, there's I do Wyatt's and Big Bear. The employees are wearing masks or scarves over their faces, but the people that come in there and eat and drink and dance and none of them are wearing masks.
So check this out. I got into a very long but logical conversation with a friend of mine who doesn't really think we need to be social distancing and doesn't really think the virus is as bad as it is. And we compared numbers from the 1918 pandemic. And I mean, the numbers really are day and night. They really, really are. And just to put it into perspective for you, Kevin, we've had like what in this world, over 1 million people have passed away, right? I think when you add up all the numbers.
I can take a look. Well, go ahead and tell us your story, and I'll look that up for you while we're doing that.
So basically what I'm getting at is, you got to account for like the inflation of the population, right? So right now we have like 7.2 or 3 billion people in the world. In 1918, the world population was 1.8 billion people, okay? Just kind of wrap your head around this real quick. I do remember. The death toll for 1918 was 30 to 50 million people died. 30 to 50 million people died from the Spanish flu. Now, I asked my friend, I said, that number, I mean, there's 20 million people as an estimation there. Like, don't you understand how that just doesn't really work as far as records go? And she said, actually, in pandemics or, in mass, death and stuff like that, that is actually normal to have an estimation like that. And I said, okay. So we did the math, and basically, long story short, we would have to lose, because I asked her, I said, please tell me how many people need to die before you start to be concerned or you start to think this is just as bad as what happened in 1918. If you account for the population now, minimum, she said 20% of the population. When you do the math, that's 300 million people. 300 million people would have to pass away before it would be a concern to people like her, which is interesting because if you think about it, 300 million people now would be the equivalent of about 30 million to 40 million people back in 1918. So that's the difference.
Well,
that's the difference in regards to like the death. If you can wrap your head around that.
Well, currently I'm looking at the statistics right now. I've just pulled them up.
Okay.
According to Johns Hopkins University, which is the main site for all the coronavirus stuff, total cases in the world are 23,203,532 right now.
Okay, so cases 23 point whatever million.
23.2 million. 804,416 deaths at this point. That's out of
not even a million yet.
That's 188 countries and regions. In the United States alone, there's 5,667,112 cases. Okay.
Right.
In the California, there's 664,435 cases, and out of that, 12,131 deaths.
Right.
Now, if I took my percentage calculator and did all this right now, which I've done before, we're running about 1.5, 1.9%.
So 19% more would have to die before this would be an issue to people who don't actually think that we're in a pandemic.
Right.
For it to really hit, for it to really like make sense to them, like we have an issue here, because that's what happened in 1918. You know, like 30 to 50 million people passed away or died because of the Spanish flu. And you know, that's how they were able to determine that they are in a pandemic. So 300 million people would have to really pass away to be equivalent with population to how many people died in 1918. That's a big number. That's almost the entire population of the United States if you think about it.
Right. There's 330 million, something like that, in the United States right now, according to I think about 2018.
Could you imagine like our country just being wiped out basically by the pandemic? Like everyone just dies. That's scary. That's scary to put it into that kind of perspective.
You know what's scary to me, honestly? What's scary to me is that people go, "Oh, it's just like a little cold. It's nothing. It's just like a little cold." This is not just like a little cold. I'm sorry.
It's a stronger virus than we're used to, and as a result, there are consequences.
There's two comments that really make me
if safety's not taken properly.
Two comments right now. It's just like a little cold. Tired of hearing that. The other is, well, when Biden wins, this whole virus thing will be over. I'm sorry.
I talked to my friend about that too, and she thinks whether Trump wins or Biden wins, it's going to go away.
Well, we'll see. If it goes away, I'm going to be upset because of the fact that we've been played either way.
Yeah.
You know, we've been played either way. Trump wins and the virus goes away the next day or the next week or whatever. We've been played. If Biden wins, it goes away, and there's a cure like that, it goes away. I think we've been played. That's what I feel.
And I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you.
And you know, at this point, I just want to get this whole election over with, this whole year over with. But I saw a report yesterday that they're saying that the coronavirus vaccine may not even be out until June now.
We can get it from Russia. They got it.
Yeah, but you know, is it working? How's Russia doing? Is all their cases
I don't know.
disappearing?
It was a trend last week, but it hasn't been in the news this week.
I haven't heard it.
I don't think
because there's no news reporters now. They're all dead from taking the vaccine.
This last week I did Kamala Week on my Facebook because, you know, I'm under the impression that Biden may not make it all 4 years if elected president.
I know you said that. He's going to make it to 2022, and that's it, right?
2022.
2022.
So we did Kamala Week, and it's you know, people that know me on a personal basis know that I have kind of like a special type of network of people where you're able to have completely opposing sides and have an open conversation and be enlightened with one another, even if you don't agree. I know it's a rarity, but I'm very blessed, and it's a special kind of thing. And we did that this week for Kamala Week. People were able to share their opinions, and that didn't get too out of hand. And we also did the DNC this week. Asked people their thoughts. And
did you watch all 4 days of that?
Not all the way through, but most of them, yes. And aside from a couple issues there, it was a pretty peaceful week with people with opposing sides talking about. And it's not just conservatives against liberals. There's plenty of people, that vote blue that aren't really for Kamala all that much. So it was great to have those conversations, amongst peers and people in my network. This week is RNC week coming up. And we're going to do the same thing.
And I'll be glued to the TV for this. No, not really.
Yeah. So we'll also be doing that also, and hopefully by next episode I'll have something to report on that. I did the same thing for Trump. I did Trump Week, back in 2016, and that was an interesting one too. So I did Kamala specifically because I feel like I just don't feel like Biden is going to make it. So I really wanted to know what people thought about Kamala.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
It's interesting that you say that you don't think Biden's going to make it either, because I know that you're a Democrat. I mean, I know that you.
But I'm a moderate Democrat,
right?
Which is a rarity in this day and age.
And I've sensed, since Trump has taken office. I mean, I was glad that he was in office at first, and but I'm kind of become a moderate Republican in that way, because there's things that I don't like that he does, or says, or tweets. But
you're not the first one to say.
Well,
that
and here's the thing: General Colin Powell he was on
the DNC,
and he's been a hard Republican since I can't tell you how long.
I think they said he has served 3 Republican presidents.
Right, and so Reagan was one of them, I believe, one of the first one, and he's been around forever, and he's been a hard Republican, and for him to go on and endorse Biden and say the things that he said, I was just totally surprised by that whole thing. And
well, the thing with Biden is Biden's not liberal. He really is moderate in his
right.
thoughts.
He is very moderate compared to Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
So I guess we'll have to see what happens. I want to see the whole situation of what's going on. I want to hear what both sides have to say. I don't think that Trump's gonna. There's some things that Trump just says that just floors me. I can't believe like I said, I've been a Republican all my life, and I don't mind telling you that. But some of the things he says just throws me for a loop. Why would you, say those things? And not that I won't vote Republican again. It's not that. It's just I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm still weighing the pros and cons of both people now.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you say that, because after doing the DNC post and the Kamala post this week,
right,
I started to and then observing the news obviously as well, I started to draw the conclusion by this point, before we hear any of the debates, before we hear anything from the RNC, by this point, I really, really do believe the majority of America has actually made up their mind, and they're just waiting to vote now. They're now, like yourself, which I don't think there's a whole lot of you left where whatever side you're on, you just don't know where you stand yet as far as voting. But I do believe the majority of the U.S. already knows what way they're going to go. They're just waiting now.
Well, I just want to see some things resolved. I'm so like I said, the drama in this whole election and it's not just drama on the Republican side. It's drama on the Democratic side. There's drama on both sides, and it's just gotten so out of hand. I realize social media has a lot to do with this.
Oh, yeah.
But, I'm just so tired of hearing it. The two things especially, after this whole election is over, the coronavirus is going away, and it's not a cold. I mean, I saw, if you were watching anything in the news yesterday, they had down in Tahunga, area, they had a protest, and the Trumpsters and the BLM got into it in a big battle on the streets there off of Foothill.
See, and I want to make note, we live in California, and we still have Trump country is loud and proud and alive and well in Southern California. It's here.
It is alive and well in Southern California. There are a lot of Republicans here, and they are very, very, very hard Republicans too. They're not moderate Republicans. They believe that the Republican way is the only way.
Yeah.
All I want is the best for the country. That's what I want. I want it to get calm a little bit. Let's, calm things down, and let's get back to, business and get some things going on here. I mean, there's just so many disputes and debates and fights and protests and things. I'm just tired of it all. I just want to go to sleep and forget about it all at some point.
Yeah.
I think that's why I wanted to start this podcast. And I want to start this podcast with you, and we're going to talk about this too with generations as we were discussing. You're much younger than me. There's things that, that your generation I don't agree with, and there's things I'm sure in my generation you think is old-fashioned. And,
Right.
I can see that. I can see, but there's many things that I think have changed. I've been open-minded all my life about, because I realize the world's going to change. And it is. I am 60 years old. I don't mind telling you that I turned 60 in April when we started this podcast. The very first day I was 60 years old. And I believe that, but I know we have some great shows coming up, and we talked about that. One is sex worker shows. We're going to talk about that in the future. And we've had, what's been nice about this podcast is you've had your generation on, I've had my generation on. You had your ASMR guy. I've had my Milli Vanilli people. We've been kind of back and forth with the trying to expand different genres and different decades of music, different decades of things happening. And I think it's cool that we're doing that. A lot of people don't do that. They focus on one thing in a podcast. And I don't think we're doing that, and I'm glad we're not doing that.
And I think that's the feedback, is the variety that we have.
We have
on
a
the
huge
show.
variety, yes.
You always want to tune in because you don't know who we're going to have or like the topics we're going to cover, other than it's relevant to what's happening in all of our lives right now.
Right, and I want it to be that way. That's what I talked to you about it, because first of all, I heard you broadcast before. I thought you were a great broadcaster, and we just hit it off in that whole area. And lo and behold, it's come to this, and we're at 12 episodes now, and we've got a season 2 coming up eventually, and we're doing very well with this whole thing.
Yeah,
and I wanted to continue on because I have lots to say, and so do you. And I think that it needs to be said, and we obviously are doing fairly good because there's lots of podcasts out there that don't make it, and we're doing just fine, and I'm very happy about that. I mean, we have a very huge brain between our two personalities that can make things work out and get people in here.
I mean, we're talking about sex workers. We're getting a couple people from the adult film industry to be on the show, and then earlier on in this episode, you were talking to Luke Bryan's drummer. I mean, it's like how can they do that? It's just like, well, that's just those are our networks, and that's just who we are.
Right, and it's a lot of podcast people don't have the clue about how. I mean, you've been in radio and had some celebrity status. I will admit that, as bad as I hate to.
It's the chef that does it, right?
Right.
My personal chef. Yeah.
If you had a limousine, though, that little car you drive is not really a limousine, but it's all right. But I mean, it's true. You have some celebrity status. You've met a lot of people, and so have I through the years of working in radio and television. I was a storm chaser in the 80s. I worked in television in the 90s and did storm chasing and things like that too. I've had a really full, nice life and had a lot of cool experiences that a lot of people don't get, and it's because I went for it, and I just I see that in you doing the same thing. You go for a lot of things that you've acted, you've done the same thing I've done. I've been to Hollywood many times and auditioned for game shows. You've done the same thing, and
not game shows.
Well, I did. My thing was I wanted to be a game show host for many, many years. I wanted to do Match Game. I'm telling you, I love Match Game. Stephen Ball, or what's the Baldwin guy?
There's Stephen Baldwin. There's Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
He's the one that hosts now. He's okay. I could have done better.
So, okay. I want to talk about generations with you. I guess it's safe to say the baby boomers have kind of been in charge since the early 90s. The Bush, oh, excuse me, I burped. That was disgusting. The Bush and Clinton transition, right? I guess that's like the very early end of like the boomer generation.
Well, actually, the boomer generation was even before that. Reagan, we had...
was Reagan a boomer?
Well, he was 80s. He was president in
I
1980.
mean, I guess what I'm saying, his age, the age.
He was okay.
He's part of a different generation. I think Boomers started kind of taking control of the country right around the Clinton era. So that's almost like 30 years you guys have been in charge of the majority of the land of the free and the home of the brave. Is it acceptable? Is it justifiable for my generation, who's going to be taking over the mantle within the next 10 years here? I mean, is it safe to blame you guys? Like, is our blame for the lefts and the rights and all the mistakes that have happened in between with you guys? Like, is it justified? Like, hey, we're coming into like hoarders. Think hoarders, right? People come in to clean up the mess for the people. Like, is it justified that we can blame you guys for the mess that we're going to have to try to clean up?
Do you think it's a mess? I don't think it's a mess. I think, here's the thing. In the 50s and 60s, it was a much different world.
Wasn't that like the time to live, like from what I've been told in history?
I would say it was a good time, but here's the thing about the 50s and the 60s and the baby boom era after the war, the Korean War and all of that, and the Vietnam War too even was in the 70s. But the thing about those times is that it was a much more realistic. I don't think your generation, and I don't mean this in a bad way, they don't have the morals that we did when we were younger.
I
just don't think so. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we're going to have sex workers on here. We're going to admit that Pornhub is going to be on here. Some of these porn sites are going to be on here. I mean, we're not going to be doing the porn sites, but we're going to have some sex workers on here who have been filmed on those.
The industry, because there's some controversial things that are happening that's actually starting to pour over into children or teenagers, are like starting to be more aware of that type of world, and we need to discuss it.
Right, and that's a thing that would never happen in the 50s and 60s. You did not let your children did not know about, children nowadays, 11, 12, 13, know about these kind of things. And in my opinion, as being a baby boomer, this is not right. I think those kids need to wait till at least 16, 17. This is just too young, and there's too many young children who are doing things to other young children even. I've read these stories about some of these young children doing things. I mean, I get it in some aspect that, kids are going to be curious, but, you've got to try. They're not protected like they used to be in the 50s and the 60s and even in the 70s and even in the 80s. They're just not protected like they used to be. They're not. They know too much. And part of that, again, is, of course, social media. They get on, and their parents don't know. Baby boomers who are my age and even some older don't know about the internet and how to block these kind of sites. They don't know how to keep them from there, even though they're offered. There's many like some of these sites that give you VPNs where you can't see your IPN number.
Right. Don't tell people the secret, Kevin.
Well, that's out. It's out. It's there's a company that advertises that all the time, and I can't think of it. Norton advertises that they have protection to keep your kids from going in and getting into certain screens. Yeah. There's protection. They offer you a VPN so people can't get your credit card information, the whole bit. I mean, back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we didn't have this kind of stuff. This is all the social media has come about.
You had to go to like a movie theater, like an adult theater, and pay for a ticket in order to go see that kind of stuff.
You had to go to the wrong side of town. I would say yes. You would have to go to the wrong side of town you'd have to go to a bad part or to a part that you wouldn't if you wanted to do that kind of stuff. And many people who had any kind of moralistic values didn't go. Those people, they didn't want to be around those people. It's just a good thing to be on your own side of town. And there was a good side of town, and there was a bad side of town that you didn't want to go to. Now, you can watch Pornhub right on your own computer. You can do
You just go to the bathroom.
What's that?
You can just go to the bathroom with your phone now. You don't have to go to the wrong side of town.
Right. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, in my opinion, that doesn't mean that it's wrong or right. It's just that the moralistic values, I don't think we're as messed up as some people think that we're trying to correct.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way then too. Okay. There's not a whole lot of millennials that are like leaders of this country, in politics. I mean, yeah, sure, we got like AOC right now, and like everybody that's older than her, is watching her with a magnifying glass.
Are they really? Because she only had a minute the other night in the Democratic National
right.
Convention. Only
but
1
then
minute.
It still made headlines because she decided she was going to endorse Bernie Sanders. I would just like to point out the Republican Party does have millennial leaders also, and they never get a spotlight either. How, like, the Republicans never spotlight their own millennials, their own youth. I mean, and the Democrats don't really actually poke fun or actually with the magnifying glass on these millennials that are Republicans as well. And I'm just curious, like, I think it goes beyond party lines. I really do think it's a generational thing. Like the fact that, like, boomers aren't acknowledging the next generation that's going to be taking over.
I think they are acknowledging them, but what they're doing is they're basically in training. If you
Training.
Well, here's the thing. You go to a new job. You go to a new job, and you don't start at the top. You don't start at the top. If you're going to be in the Republican Party, you don't start at the top. You have to start as a gopher. You may go run and get coffee. You may be running errands. You may be, printing papers. You may be doing these things. And that's not how I don't think that's how the DNC feels. I think that they want to put their, they believe that if you want to get the job, you go and you start. And that's the problem. I think a lot of the RNC doesn't believe in the DNC because of the fact that they think that they don't have any knowledge. They don't think they have any training, any experience.
Right.
That's they don't have that. And you have to build experience. You can't just go into any job and start as the president of a company, unless it's your own company, of course. And then you're still going to be trying to figure out what you're going to do and how your things are going.
Interesting. I didn't think about it that way. I guess that does make a lot of sense.
So you can't just, you and I, let's face it, this a perfect example of this podcast. I've been doing this since 1975. How long have you been doing this?
Well, let's see. I was born, a minute ago, so not as long. I wasn't born when you were doing
But how long
this.
have you?
Let's just say that.
When did you start working in radio? When did you start doing voiceovers? When did you start actually being an on-air person?
Okay, so
What year?
If you don't count if you don't count the recording artist and the acting, and you actually do broadcasts, probably about 20. Actually, we can count my internet days. So I was about 24.
So we're going to say 1996 then.
So no,
That's 24 years ago.
No.
You were 24.
No, I was 24.
Okay.
So probably within the last 5 to 10 years.
Okay. We'll say 10 years because I know I believe the recording part of it, the singing part of it counts too. I did the same thing. I started in 1974 playing drums, playing the guitar, and playing in bands. I had a gentleman that signed. His name was Bobby Roybal, still around, great guy. Lives in my hometown in New Mexico. He was a police officer and a postal worker for many years. A very, very moralistic gentleman. Had 2 kids and had a wife and a whole bit. And he signed me into the bars because I was not old enough. He had a band. He was Elvis. He was one of the very first Elvis impersonators. Actually, we did a lot of Elvis shows.
Oh, that's so cool!
And it was very, very cool. And he would sign me into the bars. And I started DJing. Another gentleman, Phil Scott, who I'm very thankful for, still alive today as well. Works in Dallas, Texas. He's a great voiceover guy. He's got one of those real cool radio voices. He was doing a disco in 1974 that I went to at the Memorial Building in high school. And I asked him, I said, how do you do this? I want to do this. And he got me a job at the radio station, KICA in Clovis, New Mexico. It was an easy listening station in November of 1975. I can tell you, November 15th, 1975 is when I started in radio. And I was just 15 years old. And I was working 7 to midnight in an adult contemporary station. We had big platters on this side over here, like they were big vinyl records, and we rolled tapes. We had big reel-to-reel tapes and the whole bit. I had to learn all that. And back then in radio, you had to have a license. You had to have, to be in radio, you have to have a third-class provisional license. Then if you wanted to get any better, like to become an engineer or something in radio, you had to get a second class and a first class. And by the time I got to my first class license, they decided to give a little card that you could write just sign up and be in radio.
Right.
And then they did away with that card. The FCC did away with it, and anybody could just be in radio now, which was really a pisser for everybody, I think, who studied, who studied engineering, because radio was very mathematical back then. You had to have some kind of engineering knowledge. And again, that's the thing about then as opposed to today. Anybody now, people can just go, oh, I want to have a podcast. That's what you and I basically did. We said, well, we've done this a long time. I see these podcasts. I said, we could do this just as good as anybody. The thing about this is that I've learned from you is we were able to get on YouTube, and we were able to get on Facebook video, and people are able to see our faces and do this live on television, as opposed to just hearing us on, Apple Podcast or iHeartRadio.
Right. There's a video component to it.
Right, and that's something that, I think is very cool about this whole deal. And a lot of podcasts still don't do that. They're still trying to figure out how to do that. And we're thankful for you for being... I worked in television for years and years, but back then we used linear audio editing or linear video editing. And today it's all digital, of course. To edit our show, we use Adobe Audition for the audio and Adobe Premiere for the video, and we do all the editing that way. And so many people have asked me about that since we started this podcast, about how do we go about having a podcast? How do we edit and do the whole thing? And I owe that to you, because I wasn't familiar, obviously, with Adobe Premiere that much. I was familiar with it, but not like you are. You work with this stuff. I worked with Adobe Audition every day, working in radio, but I didn't.
I do it in my sleep.
Right. Same thing with me with Adobe Audition in my sleep. But you do it with Premiere in your sleep, because you're the video guy. So I'm the audio guy. You're the video guy. Which
it works out.
It works out great.
So okay. So morals. Let's go back to that. The morals. Yeah, we have some interesting compromised morals, and we've justified it, I guess, in my generation. I'm not gonna lie. What else?
You were talking about
what else?
You were talking about the kids earlier. The kids. Pedophilia. Pedophiles.
Well, that's more like the older generations, like the boomers and like the Gen Xers.
No,
with the pedophilia.
They're trying to justify this. This is just wrong.
Oh, the justification. So you mean to tell me the millennials are justifying pedophilia?
I believe they are. I think we would, the baby boomers would never want that. We have, did it happen? Yes. Was it recognized? Yes. The problem is that it's still wrong. It's totally 100% wrong. This is something that no child should ever have to go through.
I think the justification, because I think you're getting at making it a law and stuff like that. I think it's one of those, not a conspiracy, but I think it's one of those things that's just so far-fetched, out of the way.
You think it's a conspiracy?
No. Like a conspiracy, it's just so far removed from like logic that there's no way anything like that would ever become a law in my lifetime or in your lifetime.
But see, here's the thing. They're saying that this as a person's sexual orientation, that they should have that right to be a pedophile.
Right, but there's all kinds of claims people make out there, and they try to take the steps to try to make it like mainstream, like lobbying or whatever.
So is this just some kind of sick stunt?
It's a sick stunt. There's no politician that's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to work on that bill to try to get that into law. There's no way. There's absolutely no way.
Well, let's hope that there is no politician that will do that, because I'm telling you, that's just sick. It's a sick. That's something I can't believe. I can't believe we even have to discuss this on our podcast about this kind of thing. That's just sick. This is something that we should be protecting children. Children should still be protected up until at least 16.
Benefit of the doubt, that is an American view, And there's obviously other countries in this world that have that same view. It's universal. But you got to remember, Kevin, there are religions and there are cultures out there where that is justified, and that's a way of life. It's kind of like some of the Asian countries that eat dog.
I disagree.
I disagree. That's
totally disagree.
But to those cultures and to those countries, like eating dog or like the pedophilia as we identify here in this country,
pedophilia should never be ever
right.
Right by any religion. Now, no religion. Anybody who's really a religion would never ever cause that.
But I mean, it's been like that for like a millennia in different cultures and in different countries. Now, is it something that we should respect? No. But what if you had to go to those countries knowing that stuff? Do you say something when you're in those countries? I don't know. I'll give you a good example. I was in Hawaii. If you remember correctly, that was when that whole North Korea launched a missile at Hawaii thing spoof happened. Well, we didn't think it was a spoof while we were there. We literally thought we were going to die. It was pretty exciting. I was walking on the beach, and there was an Asian couple that I believe they were Chinese that were on the beach. It was a husband, a wife, and a little daughter. She had to be like 6 or 7. Right. Well, she was crying. She just kept crying. She wouldn't stop crying. And the dad literally took his hand and just smacked it across her face. You could tell they were foreigners. They definitely were not Americans. They were definitely foreigners. And I was just like, do I say something? Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to say something because that's their culture. You know, I don't know. I absolutely don't know. You know, I told my mom about it because, you know, my mom is Asian also. And I'm like, when I got back to the hotel, I'm like, Mom, I just saw this Asian guy smack his child. And like, it was really hard. It wasn't like a spank or like a little tap on the mouth. Like, it was like he smacked her, you know? I mean, the kid stopped crying after that, but you know, and my mom just looked at me and laughed and was like, well, what do you want? Like,
well, when I was a kid, you know, my mom would say, you know, you better stop crying. I'm going to give you something to really cry about. And she would smack me in the face. I mean, she would smack me in the head. I tell you a story. I was being mean. I was a teenager, 14 years old, and I was being mean to the dog, kicking on the dog. And my mom came in and saw that, and she actually punched me in the head and picked up a frying pan to hit me.
I used to get the wooden spoon because we are part Dutch, so like it was a wooden spoon in my house.
There was never no shortage of discipline in my house, and I deserved everything that I got from my parents. I deserved.
But you know, as an adult and growing up in the society that we're growing up in now, or living in, that it's foreign to me now. You know, to see that, like I look at that and I'm like I can't not say anything. You know, or I can say something, but it's like that's something that we don't do anymore in this country.
Things have changed. Things have changed.
Weird. It's very weird to see that.
And I think that's part of the problem. And I know this is going to sound crass to you. I think that's part of the problem. As a baby boomer, I think that the discipline for a lot of children is not there like it used to be. Timeouts don't work. I never felt that a timeout works. I know many people who agree with that. Children need to be spanked. I know many people who don't agree with that, and many people who do agree with that. And I feel that, you know, even now in the laws, I mean, we're letting people out of prison because of the coronavirus. I mean, we had, as we've talked before in a couple of other episodes, there was a guy who did high-speed chases 3 or 4 times and got put in jail and immediately was released because of the coronavirus. Or a lot of these people get slapped on the hand or on the wrist because they did something pretty bad to somebody, but yet they only get a wrist slap. I mean, let's talk about how about Lori Loughlin, for instance.
It's white collar crime. Kevin. Come on.
I met Lori Loughlin in the 80s in Amarillo, Texas. She was still on the edge of night at that time, and she came to town to do some kind of play or some kind of promotion. And she was a snob. She was a real snob. She really was. And to see her go to prison and get, she paid $150,000 and faked her, you know, for her children.
And her husband did $250 plus 5 months.
He got $250 in 5 months. I mean, do you think that's actually good enough?
I think it's white collar crime. So I think that whatever you know the judges put in, you know, as far as a sentence goes, like that's just the way it is.
You know, and she's probably not going to serve all of that either because, you know, Felicity Huffman got 14 days and she served 11.
So like, okay, I don't know. I would have to compare that offense. Basically, what I'd have to do is I'd have to find somebody who did the exact same crime that she did, who's not famous or who does not have wealth like that, and see if the punishment for the same white collar offense is justified, or do they go to jail for like 5 or 10 years for the same crime? That's what I would have to look at. Now, with that, I mean, we've had black people and we've had white people in like the same state, or even actually the same judges in some cases, that have committed like almost identical offenses, and the black offender actually got more of a punishment than the white offender. So that has been proven.
Right.
But as far as like this white collar crime stuff, I don't know. I would have to see. Do I think it's right? Personally, no. I honestly think if you're going to commit fraud that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, you should have some intense punishment. I don't necessarily mean or think that intense punishment should be behind bars. I think it should be more of you giving back to society to a certain degree. And I don't know what that looks like yet. Because if it's a white collar crime, clearly you have money to commit those type of offenses. So you should be able to have the money as your collateral, and a lot of money to make up for your offenses.
Well, I can see that, and I could agree with that to some extent. I just feel that you're right. A lot of I'd have to know the justification for the reason why. I mean, he had obviously more money than maybe he's got more money than her because he's an entrepreneur, right? So the thing is, they spent a lot of money to get their kids into college by faking their their transcripts,
their application,
and all that information.
It's test scores,
and here there are plenty of kids out there of all black, white, yellow, whatever the case may be, that want to get into college and they don't have any money and they can barely afford to get in, and it's not fair to them. It's not fair to them at all. I think because you have money doesn't make it right for you to have an advantage. I mean,
and what I'm about to say also may sound very risque or very edgy or controversial, but if you're going to do that as a parent, if you can afford that privilege to advance the future of your child by cheating, there's nothing wrong with advancing your child's future. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can do anything that's legal to help them have the best life or affluent life possible. But if you're going to do it the wrong way, I honestly and fully do believe that the discipline or the consequences should also happen to your child. I fully believe, like, obviously, not go to jail, but like, even if your child didn't know you were doing it, like, I think that the kid should be kicked out of the school. I think the child should be blacklisted. You should not be allowed to, have the opportunity to go to that particular school that they desire. And I believe that it should be like a permanent record situation where if that child decides to apply to another school that's similar, that information comes up on their record that happened.
It should be on their record.
The reason is, you are guilty by association. Maybe if that was a thing, parents wouldn't do that because it could be jeopardizing the entire college and future career of their child. So why would they even want to attempt that? That's how I feel. I really do feel that should be a thing.
Well, it is a thing. And also, she wasn't even good enough to get into the college in the first place. This is why her parents, paid this amount of money to get her into the college on this, rowing thing or whatever it was that she was supposed to be good at, athletics type thing. She wasn't even going to be accepted in the first place until the guy who was. And how many people are people who are accepting applications for colleges and going through and accepting, we're looking at Yale, we're looking at Harvard, and some of these other schools, UCLA, is an example. They're pretty high-class schools, and they have, the guy who was accepting all this, he's in the center of he's in the center of this whole thing. All these people came to him, and he took all their money. What did he do with all that money? He bettered himself. He's one who should really go to jail for a hard time. But everybody in that, all the way down, it trickles down just like, someone's at the top of the ladder and they work their way down to the bottom. So people at the bottom need to be as, show that they were involved with this whole thing.
there are loopholes, by the way. There are loopholes to getting into these schools. Now, yeah, they have to take X amount of applications, right? And you have to have the qualifications, whatever the minimum is that they set. If you can meet those minimums, technically you're eligible to get into the school. So from there, it just becomes a pick and choose process. So if you have a parent, this is the loophole, if you have a parent that's donating boatloads of money to the foundation, and it's literally just a donation, it's a legal donation, it's a check, it's cash,
Right.
however, to these foundations, and you are applying to these schools and you are meeting the bare minimum requirements, it's up to that school whether or not they want to take you, but there's no law that's being broken
Right.
at that point, like, and that would be a loophole. Like the school accepts you. It's obvious they probably accepted you because the parent, it's safe to assume that they're accepting you because the parent decided to donate to the foundation a lot of money. But that's one of those exceptions where it's legal. And I don't have problems with that. I have problems with people cheating the system, like specifically like lying about like my kid did A, B, and C, get them into the school.
Well,
that's not right.
The kids should have good transcripts too. You've got to have good. You should be making good grades, and you should. If a child really wants to, here's the thing that's not instilled. Again, we're talking about morals one more time. We're going back to the beginning here. Work ethics in children are not always instilled like they used to be. They're not.
No.
They're not.
No. Millennials that's where it's starting to break up. Like the first half of millennials have that work ethic in them because they had baby boomer parents that taught them that stuff. Gen X is the same way. Like they had that stuff instilled in them. But here's the thing. Gen X are the ones that are having the Gen Zers, which are the ones that are in college right now or just graduating high school. And they have like technology and everything's been done for them. So they don't understand what hard work or putting in the time means.
Right.
There is a disconnect. I know this because I have nieces and nephew, and I've taught kids that age, and I've mentored kids that age. I say kids, but they're like in their 20s. And I've seen across the board very similar work ethics, and it's very scary to see what's becoming an adult and coming into the workforce if they can even get a job because of the lack of work ethic.
Well, I agree. The work ethic has gone down by far, and this shows in places where you go get things to eat that the people I've seen.
Oh, I was just going to say that. Go to the fast food restaurant.
Perfect example.
And order a food. And just when you go, start paying attention. Start paying more attention to how they take your order, how they give you your food. You'll start to see things that you never really saw when you were going to fast food restaurants when you were younger.
Exactly. And, the work ethic is kids will get a job anywhere, and they would work hard, and they would, even around the house. Kids take out the trash. Kids paint the house. Let's mow the lawn. I mean,
I wasn't allowed to paint the house because my parents thought I was going to screw it up.
See, my dad made me, I had to, even when I moved out and I moved in with some other people, in order for me to pay rent, I still maybe didn't make enough money for rent or whatever. I actually had to do work around their house. I mean, I had to trim the lawn. I had to, edge the lawn, a sidewalk. I got up on the roof and the eaves and cleaned out the leaves, and I had to scrape the paint and repaint the trimming. I did a lot of things like that when I was younger. I mowed lawns when I was younger.
I had to do that. Yeah.
I had to do things that kids today don't do. People don't come around and say, "Hey, do you want to mow a lawn? I need, I'll mow your lawn for $10." Nobody does that anymore. You don't see it. I don't see it. The kids today, they want to play their video games, and they're sitting there and they're getting heavier and heavier by sitting around and not.
Don't forget, it's about the likes and the follows too, right? So, and what I've noticed is kids put so much of a dependence on the numbers that they don't even know how to transform that. See, here's the disconnect right here. They know how to get to A, but they don't know how A connects to B.
Right.
So they're getting the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, or they're going viral as far as the followers and the likes and the views go, but they don't know how to turn that into profit. All they know is, I want to be famous. I want to be TikTok famous. I want to be Snapchat famous or Instagram famous. It's like, do you know how to make a career out of that? Do you know how to make money off of that? Well, no. Well, no,
because they don't have the education and the training,
Yeah.
which is what we go back to the training part of it.
And then the other excuse is like, well, I none of that matters to me. I just want the attention, and it's
Right.
like, okay, well, that'll stop eventually. It's just a fad. You have to know how to sustain that if you really want this. And it's the gears are just not clicking.
Well, they're not.
You don't go into the entertainment industry and say, I want to be famous, and not try to figure out how to follow through with that to have longevity and sustain. Some do, and then they burn out.
Well, that's the thing. Again,
with
training.
social media influencers.
Again, training is the main thing. You got to know the business side of everything, Andrew. We know that. You've been in it long enough to know there's a business side to this. And if you want to be famous, I don't care if it's a TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, if you want to be on YouTube, if you want to be on television, you want to be in radio, you want to be in the movies, if you want to go out and wash cars for a living for the rest of your life, you have to know the business side of it all. You can't, or work in fast food as McDonald's manager or whatever the case is, you need to learn the whole amount of business. There's an amount of training that goes into it. There's an amount of learning that goes into it. You need to know the insides and out of everything. I mean,
I'll give you an example, because prior to COVID, I used to speak at a lot of schools because I got my start on the internet. I started doing live streaming video. History lesson here. I started doing live stream video before it became viral. I was cranking out 32,000 views for an hour-long broadcast of my old ACTV show on Stickum. That's just what I was and what we were doing at the time. And it was new, and it was the Wild West, and no one really knew how to do that stuff. And there was no way to have ad revenue on that. It wasn't a thing yet. This is all before viral was a thing.
Right.
But I understood how it worked, and I understood how to get that stuff. And I have explained, as a professional who's done this, to students, high school students, like, this is what viral means. This is how you convert it into making money and stuff. And let's see, high school is about 6 or 7 periods, right? So on any given day, like if I was teaching one class or speaking at one class, 6 or 7 classes, all of those students, Kevin, I have had only maybe 1 or 2 per school, if that actually were gravitated towards what I was talking to them about as far as how it all worked. Like, they wanted to know more about the back end of it, and the other kids just don't care at all. And it's just interesting to me, like, maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is just a fad, and it goes away, and then kids are trying to figure out what it is they really want in life when it goes away. I don't know.
I don't think it's a fad, because we were talking to the teachers a few weeks ago back, on our teachers episode.
Yeah.
And a lot of those teachers realized that a lot of those kids don't pay. Remember the one from Texas, Christy?
Yeah.
Said that a lot of her kids, what was it, like 35% or of the attention span or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly what it was that we were talking about. I have to go back to that episode. But, a lot of these kids don't comprehend or don't care to comprehend what they need to. A lot of kids don't even have a career decided and at the end of high school and into college.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's okay. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then my first year in college, I changed my major. I'm not making this up, 5 times. I had an anxiety attack. It was really, really sad, because all 4 years in high school, I was going to be a veterinarian. And then I found my love for the arts, and that all changed. But yes, I do agree with you. Again, only 1 or 2 students, if I ever go and speak at a school, will usually be gravitated towards what I say. And then they'll want to talk to me a little more about what I know and like how they can learn more.
Right.
The rest of them don't really care, but yet they use it all the time, and And yeah, I was trying to be like, devil's advocate. Like maybe it's just a fad, maybe it's going away. But in all honesty, you're right. It's not going anywhere. This is their life. This is how they communicate now. They use it as a communication device, and it is completely it's completely rewired how kids think as far as being wanted or being liked. And kids these days, they don't know how to have face-to-face communication with one another. That's not a reality anymore, and it's sad. That alone is a pandemic if you really think about it.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Your generation, do you think it's a problem that they've made a problem? Because
do you think my generation's made it a problem?
Well, let me finish this. Do you think your generation has made a problem for a lot of businesses? Like, let me go back. Let me correct that. Do you think your generation has made a problem for a lot of entertainers like you and I, who are already established in the business, who started out as making money, but we were undercut by people who were so hungry to get into the fields? I mean, I've discussed this before, probably before too. A lot of bands, they'll play for beer money. They'll play for beer.
Right.
They don't, a lot of bands will make $1,000.
I don't believe so. And this is why. Mark Zuckerberg, a good example. He created Facebook as a way for people to communicate. If anything, look how we do a podcast. If anything, this type of platform, this type of format, social media helps elevate the way that we communicate or the way that we do our crafts and stuff. So you're left with a more higher quality product, by the way we do it, versus somebody who just decides to put a podcast together with video and stuff, and they don't know all the technicalities to produce a really good show. So if anything, I think it just helps enhance what we're able to do. And the reason I say that is I started as an independent recording artist. If I didn't have social media back in the days of Stick'em and the early days of Facebook, if I didn't have that, and MySpace, let's not forget MySpace, right? I love Tom. If I didn't have that way to communicate with fans and be something, I wouldn't be where I am now. It helped independent artists like myself have a platform and have an outlet to grow and show that, hey, I may not be like one of the next Backstreet Boys or one of the next Lady Gagas, but I'm good too, and I have talent, and this is how you can find me. Please discover me. This is my opportunity. There are so many independent artists out there that started that way, and without those avenues, it never would have happened for them. Good example that are mainstream. Justin Bieber had YouTube. People forget this, but Taylor Swift had MySpace. If there was no MySpace, you would not have Taylor Swift now.
Yeah, but you had people before that. I mean, let's go back to the 90s, the last end of the 90s into the 2000s. You had people like Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera.
That were still getting discovered the old-fashioned way.
They were still getting discovered, but they had talent. They were real talented people who, they had promoters who they hired. They had to have some kind of help, and these promoters. That's the thing about a lot of Facebook. The promoters are yourselves now.
Yeah.
You don't have promoters that you've hired out. There was specific people who did promotions, who made posters, who made, got you radio interviews, who took you on places
and
on tour.
That stuff still happens, but you can do it yourself now, and I think that's great because there's not a cap on the market.
But if people don't know how to do it, what's the use of it? A lot of these people,
right?
I mean, these people don't have. Some of these people, let's just face it. I'm going to be honest here.
Yeah, go for it.
A lot of these people do not have talent today. I'm sorry.
You're right.
They can't sing. They don't know anything about radio. They don't know anything about the business. They might as well go into something different that they do have talent at, because
and
it's
here's
not
the
in
best
this business.
And here's the best part about that. That is the risk they take by trying to figure it out on their own. And some do it right.
Some do it right, of course.
And they figure it out. The others, they're out there and it's just crash and burn. And that's a learning experience, That is the ones that are really good and the ones that are doing it, mainstream media will find them. Right? Mainstream media will find them, and they will be through the proper search engines. the fact that so many more people are doing iHeartRadio now and Spotify and stuff like that, there are ways to get on the featured list or the featured stations of those. I was on some of the earlier featured stations that that iHeartRadio had when the WB TV station went away, and they merged with CBS, and they became the CW.
Right.
They had their own radio station on iHeart. It was called Radioactive. And it was like a new way to promote the CW. I remember
Radioactive.
I was able to get on there. I was also able to get on a couple of Supercuts, had a couple stations too, the hair people.
Right.
So I was able to be featured on those type of stations too, but that was because I knew what I was doing and stuff. A lot of artists don't know what they're doing, and that's okay. If they get discovered, they get discovered, but there's an image thing to it too. If they don't know what they're doing, that's the gamble.
Well, they may not know what they're doing, but there are people who do know what they're doing who still have no talent, and that just drives me crazy. I mean, they know what they're doing and they get themselves promoted, and they have no talent whatsoever.
Wait a second. Okay, hold on. Before social media, that was always a thing in the entertainment industry. There is a formula to make a boy band. There's at least one person who never sings. They just look pretty and can dance. There's an image. There is a brand. There's a way to brand something a certain way and sell it. And if you take social media out of the picture, the entertainment industry, the music business has been doing that since the beginning of the music business. So yeah, social media is the same way. You may be talentless, but you can make yourself look so cool and so awesome and get so famous off of that. So it's literally the same thing. It's just through social media.
I mean, let's talk about example Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is a DJ. And she's actually a fairly good DJ.
Yeah, she's not bad.
She's a pretty good DJ, and but people just think she's talentless, because all I remember her for is
that's because of her image.
Yeah,
that was the image that she created.
Yeah, she created the bimbo type stupidity image, I guess you want to say.
I love Paris Hilton.
I actually do too.
I will take Paris Hilton over the Kardashians any
Absolutely.
day of the week.
I agree with you 100%.
Any day of the week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I never.
She has her own catchphrase. That's hot.
I've never
That's
watched
so cool.
one episode of the Kardashians whatsoever. That show comes on and click, I change
We
the
should
channel.
do an episode where you watch the Kardashians. I swear to you, and like do a review of it. That would be awesome.
Sure,
I think
we
we're
can
gonna
do that. We should do that. And we should find something that you have to watch.
Like, give me an example.
Oh, maybe like I've been watching The Rifleman. You know who that is?
What is that?
That's an old show from the 50s. It's a Western.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I can make you watch
horrible.
The Rifleman or Bonanza, and then you can critique it and see what you think about.
I think we should do that. I think we should do like a generational TV show challenge.
That would be pretty cool.
And then have a whole episode on it. That might be pretty funny.
That would be funny. That would be really funny.
So, okay. All right. I'll write it down. We'll talk about it.
The generational challenge.
Yeah. We got to wrap up the show, though. We're running over on time.
Oh, we always do. We get into these talks, and it's really good.
Yeah. It's really good stuff.
We appreciate everybody coming out and watching our show, as always. Kevin and Andrew Have a Podcast. Of course, you can catch us on YouTube. At Kevin and Andrew Have a Podcast on YouTube and on Facebook.
Make sure to subscribe and follow on Facebook and YouTube.
We'd love to have you as followers. Of course, you can email us at Kevin and Andrew Have a Podcast, right?
Well, it's KOAC podcast at gmail.com.
I'll still never get that right. I made that up myself, and I still can't get it right.
KOAC podcast at gmail.com.
And then what else do we have? We have a Twitter.
We have a Twitter. I think it's KOAC podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, you can tweet us there. And then, just, if you're listening to us on iHeartRadio, thank you so much. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker, and there's a couple other ones out there. We appreciate all the platforms that are able to host our show for you guys to listen to us or watch us wherever you are in the country. And I think we have a couple internationally also that also tune into the show.
Right.
So thank you so much for that.
And you know what else? If you have something that you want to say about our show tonight in regards to the generations, the millennials and the baby boomers, and maybe some of the things that you think might be responsible for the way the world is today, KOAC podcast at gmail.com. I mean,
right.
We want to hear from you. and send it to Andrew. He'll reply to you.
Yeah, send it to me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, and I do respond back. So
do I. So do I. We both respond. So
yeah,
we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, it's episode 12. Kevin and Andrew have a podcast. We will see you soon. We got some great shows coming up for you in the future.
Yep.
And anything else you'd like to add to that, Andrew?
Thanks for the support, and we'll keep entertaining. Later.
Right. Have peace and God bless.